Hello and welcome, everyone. I am Justina Okechukwu. This is Energy Frontiers, proudly brought to you with support, as always, from the African Energy Chamber. Let's get started with some energy news headlines from Africa and around the world. A number of oil fields in Libya were shut down on Thursday in a protest by local tribe against the kidnapping of a former minister. The protest in the North African oil-producing state alone could take more than 250,000 barrels of oil per day from the market, according to ANZ research. Still in North Africa, Egypt has unveiled the country's first locally produced 2,000 horsepower automatic trailer-mounted onshore oil drilling rig, jointly manufactured with China. Ghana is set to commence operations on a $1.98 billion oil refining facility at the Tema region by the end of August. The refinery is expected to produce 5 million metric tons of petroleum products, including liquefied petroleum gas, jet fuel, gasoline, diesel, and fuel oil. The Saudi Fund for Development has signed a deal to provide a soft loan of $20 million to fund an electricity project in Rwanda. That deal could help boost the Kigali government's effort to reach 100% electricity coverage by 2024. Global oil demand is expected to grow by 2.4 million barrels per day in 2023 and by 2.2 million barrels per day in 2024, according to a latest forecast by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. Meanwhile, the International Energy Agency on Thursday cut its global oil demand growth forecast by 2.2 million barrels per day in 2023 to an average of 102.1 million barrels per day, citing persistent macroeconomic headwinds. The African Energy Chamber has appointed international business consultant and CEO of Global Strategies, Vince Trovato, as the Chamber's newest board member. We say congratulations to Trovato. And finally, the Petroleum Authority of Uganda says a report released by the Human Rights Watch about the East African crude oil pipeline infringing on the rights of project-affected persons is biased and follows the pattern of similar attempts to discredit the country's national petroleum program on grounds that are not based on available information or engagement with relevant institutions. And that was a snapshot of your energy news headlines. When we return, Tanzania is planning to start the export of liquefied natural gas within 5 years. More on that after this break. This is Energy Frontiers. Now, Tanzania is expected to sign a host government agreement with global energy majors Shell, Equinor, and ExxonMobil for the country's long-awaited $42 billion liquefied natural gas project this July after negotiations were completed in May. In addition to signing the agreement, the government is expected to sign an updated production sharing agreement with the energy firms, as well as a new law to fast-track its offshore LNG projects. So I sat to an interview with Amne Suedi, Managing Director at Shikana Investment and Advisory Group based in Tanzania, for more on all of this. Now, where is Tanzania in terms of plans to sign the proposed host agreement this July?
Okay, so I believe you're referring to the LNG project. A few months ago, the parties, including the government of Tanzania and the oil companies, they basically agreed to terms of agreements in both the host government agreement, production sharing agreement, and also other project agreements. So that's kind of the first phase of the projects or negotiations, and you could say that negotiations have now closed because the terms have been agreed. But basically now the parties are in the phase of just reviewing those terms and making sure that everything is aligned, everything is robust, and this is a very important process actually to undertake, because it just assures that things will be much smoother, going forward. So the plan was to sign the host government agreement this July, but I do not think that it's going to be happening. Not because there is any change of mind of parties or anything, but just delays as they tend to happen in these kind of projects. So I think that the signing of the host government agreement will probably take place later during this year.
Now, bring me up to speed on negotiations for the EACOP project, that's the East African Crude Oil Pipeline project, and other LNG projects in Tanzania. Where are we on that?
Okay, so first, it's important to distinguish that the EACOP project, when it comes to Tanzania, is not looked at as an oil project, but as an infrastructure project. It's an oil project when it comes to Uganda. Tanzania is building 80% of the pipeline for the transportation of the oil, which is coming from Uganda. So right now, EACOP has reached the phase of land settlement and compensation. So essentially just compensating all the owners and resettling the people that would have to leave and resettle elsewhere to make way for this project. So this is essentially where that phase stands on EACOP, and I think once that is finished, then they will enter into the phase of projects financing and raising funds for the project. For the LNG project, it has a long way until it truly materializes. That means we're actually in the phase of production. Right now, we're still at the stage of signing the hosting agreements. These agreements, of course, there's a process to it. Even after signing, it needs to go through the cabinet ministers and adopted at the cabinet minister level. Then it needs to go to Parliament, and Parliament needs to basically sit down, go through these agreements, and then approve them as well. So maybe we can say that by the end of this year, or maybe early next year, if we're optimistic, the Parliament may have approved these agreements. Then the parties will then enter into the engineering phase, which will last approximately 2 years. Then, you have to count another 2 years for the construction phase. But also you have to remember that we're entering election season as of next year. There's the elections in 2025. So that tends to disrupt a number of things and slow down a number of things. So I think when it comes to the LNG project, the ambition is to reach production by 2029, but let us see, because there's a lot of moving pieces.
My conversation right there with Amne Suedi, Managing Director at Shikana Investment and Advisory Group based in Tanzania. In the meantime, stand by for a deep into IEA's inaugural edition of the Critical Minerals Market Review 2023. We'll be right back.
Imagine a future where tomorrow's solutions build a world of opportunities for all, and where human potential is truly realized, where every child has an equal chance in life, no matter where they were born. Imagine the potential of a continent built on low-carbon oil and natural gas and abundant renewable energy. Imagine Mozambique, Angola, Nigeria, Uganda, Senegal, Egypt, Namibia, and Algeria being let free to develop their natural resources without pressure from wealthy countries to leave it in the ground. Imagine an Africa where we cut red tape bureaucracy and provide better fiscal terms so we can compete globally for energy investments. African Energy Week is the African Energy Chamber's annual event held at the Cape Town waterfront, uniting African energy leaders, global investors, and executives from across the public and private sector for 4 days of intense dialogue on the future of the African energy industry. Showcasing the latest technologies and innovations to 5,000 plus registered delegates from over 100 countries and international professionals from across the global energy sector. Be part of the future of the energy industry and join the energy movement by becoming an official sponsor, exhibitor, delegate, or partner. African Energy Week.
Welcome back to the program. Now, the market for energy transition minerals climbed to $320 billion in 2022 and is expected to grow rapidly, moving it increasingly to center stage for the global mining industry. And that's according to the International Energy Agency's Critical Minerals Market Review released this week. That analytical survey shows that from 2017 to 2022, the energy sector was the main driver behind a tripling in overall demand for lithium, a 70% jump in demand for cobalt, and a 40% rise in demand for nickel. But there's need to do more in the critical minerals sector, according to IEA officials. Let's listen.
I should tell you that my colleague Taeum Kim and his colleagues look at all the project pipeline of the critical minerals today around the world. And what we say that if all those projects would see the light of the day, and there's a big if there, of course, then we would cover about 2/3 of the critical minerals we need for reaching our net zero targets, a major improvement in terms of the investment and project pipeline. Having said that, no, in addition to this rather encouraging news, there are two worries we have, which were expressed in this report. One of them is the issue of concentration. In other words, lack of diversification of the critical minerals development and especially refining. When we look at the refining segment today, where the critical minerals are refined, we see one country, namely China, plays a dominant role. And as of this year, China's share in the global critical minerals refining reaches over 2/3. But one should also note that China itself would need raw materials, for example, cobalt. Almost all the cobalt to China needs to come from Democratic Republic of Congo. So there is a issue there. But our report registers this concern of lack of diversification here in terms of the supply. The second concern our report registers is the environmental and social indicators. When we look at some of the environmental indicators, such as the emission intensity of production, it is not improving when we compare our numbers 2 years ago. When we look at the water needed for the process, it is even going in the wrong direction. We need more water today for the process compared to 2 years ago.
And it is the case at the moment that most of the battery electric vehicles that are sold today are large. They're large cars, they're SUVs, about 60% of the new sales are these large models. That's true, 60% in Europe, around the same in China, and an even greater share in the United States. And an electric SUV, has a battery size that's 2 or 3 times larger than that of a small electric vehicle. So you can immediately see that the choice of EV has a big impact then on the overall requirement for some of the critical minerals that we're talking about. So we should remain very focused on the demand side, looking at the way that consumer choices also pass through into overall demand for battery metals and other critical minerals. And that also includes elements like getting away from cars altogether, improving the quality of public transport, and enabling sort of non-car choices particularly for shorter journeys. However, we think it's probably natural that at this stage in the market development, companies are priorities, and the auto manufacturers are prioritizing some of these higher value segments, so the larger vehicles. If the companies are to hit their own targets for EV sales, they will inevitably need to produce some more sort of mass market models, some smaller cars, and we think that would also then have implications for the amount of critical minerals that are required for that segment.
The Southern African German Chamber of Commerce and Industry says it has partnered with Energy Capital and Power for the Critical Minerals Africa Summit, which is set to take place in Cape Town, South Africa on October 17 and 18. Not just that, the summit will be happening together with the continent's largest energy event, African Energy Week, also in Cape Town, South Africa, from October 16 to 20, and all access passes are almost sold out. You can find all of the details of the program, the lineup of speakers, and reserve your spot by checking the AEC website at www.energychamber.org. And that's a wrap on the show this week. We thank you for watching. Remember to follow the program on Frontier Africa Reports website, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us across all our social media handles as indicated on the screen. It's goodbye from me, Justina Okechukwu. I'll see you soon.